Hi, I'm Jim Fuseli, host and executive producer of Writers at Work, a new podcast for readers and writers about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creating writing process. We had intended to launch Writers at Work at summer's end, but then something extraordinary happened. We wanted to share it with you as soon as we could. I had arranged to interview on July 18th James Lee Burke, who to my mind is among the best and most important American popular writers of the 20th and now 21st century. Our producer, Erin Mitchell, and I had already established a template for how Writers at Work interviews would unfold, but Jim couldn't be constrained. All for the best, as you'll soon hear. July 18th, it turned out, was the day he finished his next Dave Robichaud novel, The Haddock Boogie, due to be published in 2026. Only hours earlier, he edited its final sentence that he had written the night before. Perhaps that's why he was in such an effusive mood. At any rate, you'll hear James Lee Burke riffing and opining on many subjects. You'll also hear how I lost control of the interview after our stand-in introduction, but that turned out to be just fine. So, edited here and there for brevity is how my time with the great James Lee Burke unfolded. Hello, this is Writers at Work, a podcast for readers and writers about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creative writing process. I'm your host, Jim Fuseli. My guest on this episode of Writers at Work is James Lee Burke, who in his ninth decade is continuing a remarkable career. His current novel, Cleat, is his 40th and 5th this decade, following A Private Cathedral featuring his seminal character Dave Robichaud, and Flags on the Bayou, winner of the Mystery Writers of America's Best Novel. It's the third time he's received that high honor. I find what Jim is doing fascinating, and I'm delighted to speak with him about it. James Lee Burke, welcome to Writers at Work.
Yes, sir.
Publishing 5 novels in the first 5 years of a decade seems like a heavy load for any author. Does it feel like that to you, Jim?
Well, I never thought of it that way, but it depends. I've been doing it a long time. I've had years that I had to work long hours at other things. That's when the real trial comes along.
Yeah. What's your schedule like nowadays?
I work all the time. It's literally true. I work in the middle of the night, early in the morning.
I'd like to ask you about how you manage your voice as a writer. Is there such a thing as an overarching James Lee Burke narrative style?
Oh, I think any artist who worries about or thinks about himself in that regard and the time it would take up, I would think maybe might try to seek some humility. This is my feeling, Jim. And I suspect you're associated with the musicians all
Yes.
over the country. So it's all this, we're all underneath the same tent. And every artist and every person who is involved with the art, I think, would probably agree with me. The gift comes from somewhere else. It's not of our making. It's from somebody else.
And yet at the same time, Jim, though, you don't wait for the muse to arrive. You stimulate the muse, you provoke the muse.
He's there. That's right. I've never had to go look for him. But that's it. It, it's a peculiar kind of syndrome that uh, this is one kind of person who uh, humility is an absolute necessity, and that if he does not possess it, he's going to have trouble down the track
Yeah,
because it's like fire. See, it's the fire is an emblem. I mean, but It comes from somewhere else. It just, you feel it in your hand. It goes down my arm. Uh, we have a ranch here up in Montana, and I can look out my window and at night, and uh, there's a big slope, and there's a lot of timber there. And when there's sometimes a full moon out, there will be light that seems to shine right out of the dirt in the root systems of the uh, trees, and it's haunted territory. It kind of frightens me sometimes, but I believe the earth is a magical place. Even when I was a little boy, I always believed there were spiritual things that worked there. It's And I used to put it this way to students. I just say, a good writer's got to be a good listener.
Yeah.
But what it
Yeah.
really means is you've got to hear the music of the spheres. We live in dangerous times today. I don't care what anybody says. I'm 87. I never thought we'd be living in a time like we are today.
I'm
Go ahead.
fascinated. No. I'm fascinated by this. Our conversation has taken a turn because um, your increasingly dark setting, and I could be wrong, Jim. I've read a lot of your books. I just find the setting in a private cathedral to be a little bit terrifying for me. And I was increasingly worried about Robichaux. And now you're telling me that you are very much aware that we're living in dangerous times.
Well,
Maybe this has filtered into your writing and your perception of how to tell a story.
it is. It's the only story I've ever written since I published my first short story at age 19. I've always written the same things. It's there. No, it's there. It's scary stuff. Characters that we see in my work have a much greater potential for enormous damage because of what the industrial age has created for us. And I think we're in it. And for example, the environment. What is the hottest century in the that's been measured or
Right.
recorded in human history? It's the 14th century. Uh, bubonic plague. The What is the source of plague and the plagues that we have had in our times? Well, animals. Why is that? Because of what we have done to the damage as we speak. And last few days, oh, I think we're in real trouble. Why? Because there are now today thousands of people with the power to do many evil things, and they're willing to sell their souls.
As a novelist, then, how do you ensure that your work has some level of optimism in it? I mean,
Well,
where do you find your saints, Jim?
it's a matter of the truth. That's it. It's the truth.
I have noticed in your first person narratives that you will occasionally, Jim, directly address the reader. You break through the
Mhm.
fourth wall, and it's a very subtle and very effective technique. Person narrative is intimate anyway. And then suddenly you're talking, or your character is talking directly to me. And
Mhm.
I find it very effective.
This is what I used to tell people in my creative writing class. And I used to tell them the most important words that uh, uh, were probably ever written by an American writer is the line, call me Ishmael.
Ah,
That's Melville. So
right.
call me Ishmael because he's indicating he is a truthful man. The point is that uh, you have to have a sense of reciprocity with the reader and artist. It doesn't matter. It could be film, uh, uh, music, painting, that there has to be this sense of faith that you can trust this person. A writer, actually, until you have a reader, because unless someone is out there looking at your work and understanding a little bit of it, that in effect you've just kind of disappeared in the mist. But that's it. There's that sense of uh, again, call me Ishmael. You can trust me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, uh, and that's what I've always tried to be honest in my writing.
At this point in the interview, Jim confessed to fatigue. Little wonder, as he explained.
This morning, I just finished a book. I put the last line of it this morning. It's 497 pages. I
Oh my God.
finished the last message this morning. Yeah, I did it. I I I rewrote it. I did it about 11 o'clock last night, but I this morning rewrote that, and the last line in the book is that will be all right. George Orwell. George Orwell said it. He said, every writer has a compulsion. He believes that he can look at a perfect truth, something that is so compelling that he gets no rest until he can put it in some form, whether it's painting, writing, sculpting, doesn't matter. He has to bring this piece of truth to the rest of the world, or he will never have peace.
Just one more
But
question.
Mhm. Yes,
Um, in the acknowledgments to Cleat, you wrote, a career is easy to lose. Without dramatics, you can quietly put away your pen or typewriter or keyboard and listen to naysayers and let your talent float out the window like a balloon. How do you gird yourself against that type of creative despair? Guess, Jim, the answer is you just write all the time.
that's it. You never. Okay, I was 20 years old and I was worked a little bit, 10 days on, 5 days off. In the oil, it was a oil company. Anyway, I worked a bit in the oil business. Anyway, and I had 10 days on the drill, 5 days back on land. And I would write those 5 days and send my work off to, and I was just 20, to some company in Canada, I remember even. And of course, everything would be rejected. But what I tried to do was never leave uh, a poem or an essay or a story at home more than 36 hours, because if you do, you ensure failure. And so I always thought that way, that uh, the issue isn't to conquer, it's just to be a player. It's to be a player. And the thing is, it's the gift is there for a reason. It's been put there for a reason. And I remember when I would teach creative writing, should be some young person would say, "Hey, Jim, you think I got it? You guys think I got some talent? I might go somewhere." Boy, I hated that question. And it's so, oh, well, golly, just keep at it, something like, but it's the wrong question. That anybody who is an artist, doesn't matter what kind, he knows he's got it, and he doesn't care what the naysayers say.
Writers at Work is a production of Bliss Publications. Erin Mitchell is our producer. Music is by Joni Mitchell, performed by Keith Jarrett. For more, see writersaTworkpodcast.com. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. Until next time, happy reading.